Welcome to
The Science Show.
Hi, I'm Anya.
And I'm Kenzie. This week we'll be studying chemistry. Today's branch will be all about
The rules and naming of molecular compounds and acids.
Let's get started with molecular compounds. Naming molecular compounds. The definition of a molecular compound is two nonmetal elements put together. There are about 5 steps or rules to making a molecular compound. The first is to write down the elements. If we are given this equation, C3F5, we need to write down the elements that are shown. Here we have carbon and fluorine. The next step is to change the second element heading to IDE. Leave the first element the same as it was. So this becomes carbon fluoride. Now we need to look at the prefixes to show how many atoms there are of each element. For this example, since there are 3 carbon, we need to make it tricarbon, and since there are 5 fluorines, we need to make it pentafluoride. This equation is tricarbon pentafluoride. Let's look at the next rule. This rule is to not use mono for the first element prefix. For this equation, we have CS, carbon sulfur. We need to add the IDE ending, carbon sulfide, and now add the prefixes. Since there is only 1 carbon, we don't need to add a prefix. Since there is 1 sulfur, we add a prefix to that one. It becomes mono. So this equation is carbon monosulfide. The last rule is when adding a prefix to an element, if the letters A and O or O and O are next to each other, change it to a single O. Here we have N2O7. So we're going to write down the element names, nitrogen and oxygen, add the IDE suffix, nitrogen oxide, and now add the prefixes. Dinitrogen, since there are 2 nitrogens, and heptaoxide, since there are 7 oxygens. However, for this, since there are an A and an O next to each other, we need to make it so it's just an O, so it becomes heptaoxide. This equation then is dinitrogen heptaoxide. Our last equation will show all of these put together. This equation is CO. We need to write down the elements, carbon and oxygen. Add the suffix to oxygen, so it's carbon oxide, and then add mono, since there's only 1 O. This equation becomes monooxide, but since we have the O and O rule, we need to make it so there's just 1 O, so it becomes carbon monoxide. There you have it. This is how to name molecular compounds.
Now that your knowledge about molecular compounds has grown,
Let's learn a little bit more about acids. Naming acids. The definition of an acid is a compound where 1 or more H+ ions are bonded to a negative ion. There are 2 things to remember when naming acids. The name of an acid depends on the negative ion, and there are 2 types of acids. One's with oxygen and one's without. Let's look at an example that has 0 oxygens. HCl. First we need to break it down into the two elements, H plus and Cl minus. Now we need to name these elements. H plus is hydrogen and Cl minus is chloride. As the rule says, if the ending of the negative ion is IDE, then it turns into IC. So here, instead of hydrochloride, we have hydrochloric acid. There you have it. Let's look at another example. HN. First, let's break it down into the two elements. We have H plus and N3 minus. Now let's name these elements. We have hydrogen nitride. Hydrogen nitride. And as the rule states, if it ends in IDE, then we change it to IC. So it becomes hydronitric acid. Alright, let's look at an acid with oxygens. HCO3 2 minus. Let's break it down. We have H plus and CO3 2 minus. These elements are hydrogen and carbonate. Now, as the rule says, ATE turns into IC, like it did before. So it becomes carbonic. But when you have acids with oxygen, you don't need the hydro. So we can get rid of the hydro, and we're left with carbonic acid. Alright, let's look at a more tricky equation. Here we have the equation HPO3 3 minus. Let's break this down into the elements. We have H plus and PO3 3 minus. Now we need to name these elements. We have hydrogen and phosphite. Now, normally, since the ending is ITE, we would change it to OUS, like the rule says. However, this is an exception to that rule. Instead of making it phosphorus, we add ORUS to the ending, making it phosphorus. And since this is an acid that has oxygens, we're going to take away the hydrogen. So we're left with phosphorus acid. Now, we have a funny way to remember these rules. We did not make these up, we found them on a YouTube video. The first one says, my ride has hydraulics. You can remember this because the first rule says that IDE ending turns into hydroic acid. The second rule is I ate something icky. The second rule, like here, says that an ATE ending turns into IC acid. Sprite is delicious. This is like the third rule because if the ending is ITE, it turns into OUS acid. There you have it, and that's how to name acids. That's it for today, youngins. I'm Anya.
And I'm Kenzie. Until next time on
The Science Show.